Welcome to Beyond Compliance. My name is Aaron Bolshaw with Safety Chain Software. I also moderate Beyond Compliance. For those of you maybe joining us for the first time, Beyond Compliance is a periodic industry update for process manufacturers and manufacturers at large. And our goal is to bring you insights around the market that shape the way that we grow our businesses, produce quality products and deliver them to customers, mitigate supply chain risk, and safeguard our brands, right? All while doing that really important thing about improving yields, maximizing productivity, right? Making those numbers. So today we've got a great discussion for everyone. We're getting into the 101 level, sort of an intro to OEE, also known, of course, as overall equipment effectiveness, which is often thought of as the pulse of manufacturing plants' health. A couple of things before we get started. Yeah, the webinar is, of course, sponsored by Safety Chain, which is the #1 plant management platform that unites compliance, safety, and production. We also want to make sure you all know you're on mute. We can't hear you. You can scream at us, but we won't answer. But we do want to hear from you. So if you have any questions, please put them into the webinar console on the right. Submit them through the presentation, and we'll save some time at the end to go through as many as we can. And we often find that that's a great, valuable piece of this time together. So, all right, and to answer everyone's favorite question, yes, if you would like to get the slides and the recording, we'll have all of that available after this is done. Just give us a quick note in that chat box there, and or the questions box rather, and we will make sure that we follow up with you. So with that, I want to introduce today's speaker. Robert Miralles is the principal with North American Operations Consulting. So not only does Robert join Beyond Compliance today with over 25 years experience managing plants throughout North America, you got 3 greenfields, 3 turnarounds, which are often very, very hard. And he joins us with extensive experience in Mexico plant operations. He also has more certifications and accreditations to his name than I think we've ever been privy to on Beyond Compliance. So welcome, Robert.
All right, Aaron, thank you much for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So Robert, I have to ask right off the top. So are you getting your PhD? Seriously?
No, but hey, like everybody, I'm looking on how I continue to learn new things and advance. But PhD.
That's a lot of acronyms and letters after your name. But hey, listen, no joke. Really, thanks for joining us. I think you're joining us from Mexico now, yes?
Oh, that's correct. I'm in Mexico right now.
All right. Well, listen, let's get into it. OEE, why don't you start out, please, by going through the agenda today, and let's get into the meat of it.
Okay, we'll get started again. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody that's on the call. For the agenda, we're going to look just real briefly at the evolution of OEE. We're going to give an introduction to the formula. It's actually a pretty simple formula. You can get as complicated as you want, and as we'll see, you can get too complicated, but it is a fairly basic formula. We'll go through each section. So we'll look at availability, your performance efficiency, and quality for spec yield. And then, what do you do from here? I'll give a very, very, very brief case study of something that I did years ago here in Mexico. And then we'll wrap up and see what questions you have. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the origin of OEE, the term, like a lot of things that we work on here in manufacturing, a lot of this came from Japan. As the name sounds, we'll get into the name in a second, but it actually came out of the TPM, or Total Productive Maintenance System, and there makes some sense to it there, because your PMs and your TPM is a little bit different, obviously. But at your TPM, you're really looking for production to take control, ownership of the care and use of their equipment. And so it arrived from there as a good way to measure how the equipment was being used, being productive, and doing its job to get things done. It also appeared in Mr. Nakajima's book that he published later. So if anybody wants to go back and do some research or do some reading, typically a lot of these books that have been translated, 40, 50 years ago, they're still extremely relevant, and not a bad thing to go back and read if that's what you like to do. So the evolution of OEE. So let me say this at first, and let me go off. Let me go off the slides for just a second. To me, OEE is kind of like that shirt you have in your closet that you really like, and depending, if you go to a party at night or you go to an event or whatever, you love the shirt, you're really glad when you put it on, you're real comfortable in it when you're out. You come back home, it goes to the closet, and you might not see it for again. OEE is something that is not used a lot. Some people might have some concerns about using it, getting into it. But it's something that, again, for some reason or another, a lot of us treat it like that shirt that we only take it out when we really need it. And then once it's, once we've got some results, we put it back away. And OEE can become an integral part of your wardrobe, if you don't mind the analogy, where you can actually build it in to help you measure your day-to-day results. So OEE, overall equipment effectiveness, really a misnomer. It's really not the effectiveness of your equipment, because it goes much beyond that. The overall part, it's somewhat, but it's not focused on the floor operations. Aaron was kidding me about all my little initials there, and really most of those come from APICS. I'm an APICS guy, so I've got the APICS certifications. I do APICS classes in English and Spanish. Like OEE really doesn't take supply chain, let's say, really into account. It would if you've got, we're going to see first pass yield if you've got fallout due to a supplier maybe, but it's really focusing on the floor operation. On the equipment, it's really much more, but there is, again, the original came from TPM, and it is based on the equipment, but we're really trying to measure the effectiveness of the entire, and I'm going to state this maybe once or twice more in this short time, the overall team that is working to produce whatever your process is doing. So it is looking at the equipment, but it's really looking how that cross-functional team is working with the people in the equipment to keep it effective. And then the effectiveness, not just efficiency, but it typically doesn't involve indirect operations or indirect people, but you could put that in there if you'd like to. Note over on the right, with most types, and this is a little, I think, a personal point of mine, with a lot of types of metrics and goals, the overall trend is so much more important than arguing, and we're going to see the formula here in a couple minutes, and even some of you guys might argue, well, no, you do it this way, you do it that way. You standardize your formula, and then you look at your trend. So personally, my point of view is, I don't think it's wrong to make slight modifications to the formulas to make it make sense for your business. So I'm more of a trend guy where follow the same pattern of how you're calculating something and see how your trend is going, rather than worry so much or bother so much about the exact way you're calculating it, and because of that reason you postpone doing it. So keep it simple. We're talking about that in a second, but I'm personally more of a trend person than you have to do it exactly this way.
Yeah, so we're going to start a poll here in just a second. We're going to ask everyone to answer this, but I wanted to say something or just kind of respond, Robert, to what you said. We always, OEE, excuse me, OEE is really funny. It's, the name is about equipment, but, our customers, we always go to them, and some of the first things we talk about, it's not really the equipment, it's sort of your whole operation. It could be that whole line, it could be the whole facility. It's really how you want to sort of isolate it to those trends that you're talking about. But when you say it's about a team thing, that is so powerful. It really is. It's not just about the processes and the equipment and the efficiencies. It's how the people really sort of interact with each other and those processes and equipment. I love that. That's a really cool way to put that. So, all right. So, Robert, we wanted to ask everyone a quick question to understand, just to level set where everyone's at in where their plant right now. And so we're going to pull up a thing that says what best describes where you are in your adoption of OEE in your plant. I'm going to launch this poll. It's going to take a couple of seconds. Everyone that's with us today is going to see this pop up, and you're going to be able to pick one of the following. We're just learning about it now, which is totally cool. This happens, right? Maybe you're in the process of talking with experts and you're kind of in that planning zone, right? Maybe you're doing it right now, but it's manual. You have to calculate OEE. You're doing this after a shift, or maybe sometimes a couple of days after a shift, right? We see that sometimes. Are you looking for automated solutions, or are you using some software, and do you have a real-time view right now? I'd love to see where people are at. Again, this is just taking the temperature of the room. We're not going to show anybody's names. This isn't to like out anyone and say, oh, this is where everyone's at. It's really to help Robert and I deliver the best sort of message that we can to where you're at. And we've got about 52% of people voted. A couple more clicks. Anyone? Couple more. Don't be shy. We're not going to say your name. Very good. All right, I'm going to close this poll here in about 3 seconds, Robert, and we're going to launch this. So we're going to share the results for everyone that voted, and I appreciate everyone taking a minute to do that. So Robert, as you look at this, who we're talking with today, anything jump out at you?
No, it's kind of what I would have imagined. With the majority of just learning about it now, this is this is a talk for beginners. So that's not too surprising. Maybe the 30% are manually doing it right now. That's a good sign. Yeah. And that means some people are saying, hey, I'm doing it manually. This is kind of a gut check to see, if I'm following the general rules, or maybe I can learn something different that I can do. So I guess pretty much as expected.
Yeah, that's a good, healthy this is a thing where people are saying, oh, this is valuable. We need to learn about it, or we're using it now. We're doing what we can with manual processes to achieve OEE, to give ourselves that look. So this is great. I love this. So thanks everyone for that. We'll have another one of these polls in a little bit, but Robert, why don't you take us now through kind of going through the efficiency side?
Okay, so we left off talking about efficiency compared to effectiveness. Well, efficiency is really for most people looking at standard hours earned and standard hours worked. It's more people focused, more accounting focused. And what I don't like about efficiency, well, two things. There's too many places to hide your problems. And so depending on your plan, depending on your culture or whatever, you've got your downtime, you've got, we had to take time off to do this, time off to do this. Real world, I mean, just looking at efficiency, I had a supervisor this week in a facility that I'm in that he calculated his efficiency to be 115%. And when I worked through it with him, it was 30. And he said, well, but I had this downtime, I had this, maintenance of this and this and this. So depending on how you do your efficiency, there's just too many places to hide your problems. And then it also really doesn't promote the teamwork that we're looking for these days to get that competitive advantage where, you get a good team going and 1 + 1 + 1 is 7. And so, the efficiency is really, it's good for accounting. If there's any accountants out there that want to beat me up, don't worry about it. But it's a good accounting one. It's got its purpose, but it's more people focused and really looking, just at trying to explain how good I did instead of where are my opportunities. Effectiveness, depending how you use it in your company or in your past, whatever. You can take other indirect, people into account. So that, that starts to get a little bit better. where you're including maybe not only your direct, but your indirect people, you know, coming into the calculation. So, you know, effectiveness is, you know, probably from an industrial engineering point of view or an operations point of view, you know, a better measure, because you're taking other indirect, you know, other indirect considerations that are very important and necessary into it, and using that as, when you start to use those salaries, and some of those indirect salaries are a lot higher, then it gives you a little bit a better perspective of actually what it's costing you to run the line. I put a note here on the right: efficiency is doing things the right way, while effectiveness is doing the right things. You can do both, and what we're looking here, you know, in OEE is, instead of being, you know, efficient or effective, actually trying to do both at the same time. So even with effectiveness, as we were saying, we're still missing a good way to measure, really, did we produce what we wanted to produce in the manner we wanted to produce it? You need a way to capture some of that other data. You know, something that I'm sure everybody here has a weekly, monthly, quarterly argument, depending on the maturity of your organization. You know, do you do preventive maintenance during or outside of normal hours? You know, do you change the, and I'm talking about PMs here, you know, do you change the maintenance schedule to where they can do the PMs on the off hours? For some people, that incurs a shift differential or a higher cost. In some cases, that could incur some safety or some other considerations. If you do it during normal hours, then obviously you're taking away your available time. So it's just the way that we can, you know, capture some of that data and at least understand what we're doing and why, and see if that's what we want to keep doing. And the other thing, depending on how you report production, you know, some supervisors, they can report their production, and for downstream operations, whether it be hours or days, you don't find out till hours or days later that there was defective product in there. You know, as we're going to see in the formula, that doesn't count. You have to take out the defectives out of your calculation. So again, there's just, it's looking to, you know, take away all of the places to hide, all the excuses, and be realistic with the team of how effective actually you're using your line and your people and your equipment and everything else to produce. So the simplified OEE formula is availability times performance or efficiency times quality. And so the availability is the amount of available hours that you have. We're going to go through these one by one. You've got your performance, your efficiency. So how efficient were you in the time that you were up during your uptime? And then your first pass yield. I think it's important to point out here, and we're going to see it maybe once or twice more in this short presentation. When you multiply 3 decimals together, you're definitely going to get a, you know, your number keeps getting lower and lower and lower, right? You know, 90% effective is really good. 90% times 90% times 90%, you're back in the low 70s. So, you know, don't be alarmed if you're not familiar with this. Don't be alarmed at the low number, but just remember you're multiplying basically, you know, 3 ratings together. So let's take the first one, availability. So it's a percentage of the scheduled time that the operation is available to operate, you know, often referred to as uptime. You know, I've worked with people that disagree with me or disagree amongst themselves of what is available time. Try to keep it fairly simple at first. So a line, in this example, line works, you know, 1 shift, 5 days, 40 hours a week. In this example, I've got 2 paid breaks, 10 minutes per shift, and then there's 5 minutes at the beginning and end of the shift that they're going to take out. So you take your available time, you know, 8 hours times 60 minutes. You're taking out your downtime. You get a 93% availability. Now on this day, whatever day, the line will stop for 30 minutes for mechanical issues. So you take out another 30 minutes, and now the line was only available at 87% that time. that day. So this is, again, you're looking to your uptime, or what was really the available time that you had, how much time did you actually run it? So a quick example, if this is a bottleneck, it needs to keep running. Well, then if I think most of us would agree, you would try to have cross training and you would try to run through the breaks so that your availability would be 100%. You're making a cognitive decision here to stop the line for 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. It's your decision. So that's going to put, again, your availability lower to begin with. And then for any downtime that you have, you're going to add to that and make that even lower. So that's the availability. For performance is how efficient were you for the uptime that you had. So how did you do against your labor standard during your uptime? Mm-hmm. So I just put an example here. A product had a labor standard of 1 minute per piece. On this day, the line produced 900 pieces while working 1,260 minutes. I'm just giving an example here. So the performance was 71%. And then lastly is quality, is your first pass yield. First pass yield might be something that maybe of the three, a lot of us don't calculate pretty well or don't collect the data. So the example I've got here is on this day, 908 pieces entered the line, 699 passed through the line without any type of rework, scrap, or fallout. So the quality or first pass yield in this example, 76%. Like a lot of this, keep it simple in the beginning. It can get very complicated. To this day, I see arguments of what is considered a rework. If they have to stop their machine to take extra time to visually check their part, if they've got a doubt on something, is that about a bad part? Typically, what you try to do on first pass yield is define what is the standard work and what is the standard operation. Anything, extra inspection, movements, anything that does not follow the standard work would be considered that it didn't go through as planned. So again, you can get complicated. You might want to start out simple, and then as you keep going, you can be a little bit more aggressive in the way that you're calculating it. So the OEE formula is the three multiplied by each other. So we've got the 87% times the 71 times the 76, and just like we mentioned earlier, comes out at 46%. Oh my gosh. One of the things that we might talk about in the questions or during here is that, why is maybe OEE not as used as maybe some other topics, and as good of a tool as it can be, why isn't it used more? And one is it usually gives you a very low number like this, especially in the beginning, if you're being honest with yourself. It's a very low number, and some people just might be uncomfortable reporting a number like that. They might actually not believe it. They might think, I'm a lot better than 46%. This can't be working. The other one is to do the improvements here, you really need to work as a team. And I know it's a cliche and all that, but because there's the nowhere to hide attitude, you really have to get maintenance and scheduling and engineering and training and quality and a lot of people involved in these things. So it forces you to work as a team. And that might cause for some people to consider this to be an ineffective tool. Maybe, if I can be kind of mean, bad Bob, because the company culture doesn't promote that maybe some of that teamwork. So the OEE actually helps foment that. It helps to grow that.
All right. It's funny you say this. This really interesting thing that you still, Robert, have these discussions and people sort of have this friction over, hey, wait, what is rework? Let's what is this downtime? We find it pretty helpful with our clients when we work through these similar situations to say it's fine to have the disagreement, but at some point putting it on paper, getting it into an SOP, getting it on an operational document that you can point at that piece of paper to say this is what is real and what isn't. One, it alleviates that discussion point. Two, it's not meant to be the end all be all. I think the discussion about what is and what isn't is important, but at the very least, operationalizing that, getting it into standardized documentation will absolutely help with some of that friction. So I really appreciate you kind of just opening up. There's a lot of gray area to this, right?
Yeah, there is, and I like when you talk about SOP. You know, the trick here is just putting down a standardized way that you want to do it, and do it for a while and see what you get. You know, what we talk about sometimes is, you know, we want to aim for the middle of the target, and if we don't think we can be perfect, we think we're not doing good enough. But what you want to do is, contract that circle and get better and better and better. So again, the SOP, standard work, get those definitions decided so you quit wasting time and you can improve that number.
Yeah, exactly. And it does, again, we don't want, I got to say it again, Robert, we don't want to lose the discussion, but we can't have a discussion every day on every shift. You know what I mean? Like, hey, let's take this into a meeting maybe in a month. Let's decide, let's open it up, let's understand. And I think what will happen, this is just a guess here, is that by looking at that trend data, that OEE data, it will help you to understand what's really going on, right? You will be able to make a better decision on what is and what isn't the downtime or the rework and all that, right? So it's kind of, you got to take the leap though. Okay, I'm going to pull up another poll here, Robert, and we just wanted to ask what area we want to see the most improvement in our plants, right? There's different areas, right? And I do have two options here, so I'm hoping I'm bringing up the right one. This is the one. Okay, so I'm going to launch this poll. Same thing as last time, everyone that's on the line, please take a second. Which area would you like to see the most improvement? Just want to see one. We're forcing you to pick one of these on purpose. To see just what your overall thought process is. Availability, which is more uptime, on-time starts, right? Performance, we're talking speed, efficiency. Let's get more units, right? Or quality. Are some of us seeing some quality problems? We're seeing that rework, scrap, that waste. We hear a lot of sometimes some horror stories, and I'm sure you do as well, Robert, where we go through a whole day of a run, and then we go chip it to the dump. So what's the biggest thing that you want? I'm going to give people about 10 more seconds. Now, in this, there's a lot of nuance, right? It really is going to depend on what you're producing, what you're manufacturing, right? What your processes look like. And I would also say it depends on how, I think, advanced the systems you have to track each of these are. So I'm going to close this poll. I appreciate everyone for taking this. Let's share this. All right, should pull up. All right, Robert, interesting. What are your thoughts?
I'm not surprised the quality won.
Yeah.
I would have expected that. So I think it's it is pretty well distributed. Quality, I would have expected maybe quality to be a little bit higher, but kind of follows to what I'd see, and it also shows the levelness, the evenness of the opportunities that people are seeing in their facilities.
Yeah, I look at these and something just jumped to my mind, and I'm just pontificating, but it seems like that that availability, uptime, on-time starts, that's going to be your production side. Your plant manager is kind of like, hey, let's get this thing going, let's go, right? And also that performance. I think whether you're in the food side or not, like your quality assurance and quality control people are definitely looking at that second one. So it looks like there might be a tale of two operational objectives here. So, all right, we'll close this up. We'll hide these results. Let's get back into it. And Robert, you're what do we do with this? So what do we want to do, right?
Okay, so now what? You see the formula. You can sit down and I really encourage, repeating myself, really encourage you to do this as a team, because if you can do this as a team, it's going to be successful. If you try to do it in a bubble, it's just going to crash and burn, because it probably won't. You're not getting even feedback on the different ones. So get the team together. Set some goals for each of the three factors. Standardize the measurements. So, and a lot of times, and again, I see it to this day, it takes us 3 weeks, 4 weeks to decide how we're going to measure something. It's frustrating. So try to standardize the measurements, try to keep it simple at first. And then, drive continuous improvement when you're seeing the gap between, in each of the factors where you want to get to, and where you're at. And obviously TPM, this is where this was born. So TPM is important where, production is taking that ownership of their machines. You got your 8 waste, the downtime acronym. You've got your, the downtime is a really nice acronym. Some of you guys have it there in your in your plans. Your prioritization, focus on the customer. What's really going to add value to the customer, and what's going to add value to your internal customer, whether it comes to cost, delivery, things like that. Even safety. The operators, they're our customers that we provide them a safe environment. The Lean Kaizen Blitz, typically the 5-day, analyze it, tear down, put it back together. You get a big shot in the arm in a small amount of time. A little bit disruptive, but it is fairly effective. You get your normally lean programs like 5S, SMED, Six Sigma, and again, make it fun with your staff. You might, and again, this could be an argument between, we could talk about all day. Some of the lines are so advanced, the OEE is pretty consistent, and Six Sigma might be where you want to turn to drive your consistency and your, to decrease your variability in your product. But you can also use it here. A case study real quick, and again, just going back to the numbers. This was a manual welding operation. It was repetitive. It was make to order. The operation was repetitive, but you had continuous setup and not really tear down, but set up and set up and set up, because we were welding beams manually for material handling racks. And so there was some setup. You were working with welding, so quality was an issue. And so we started with the OEE there in week 11, as you can see on the graph. You can see we were in the mid 40s. We looked at two different lines here, but you can see over the first 10 weeks, we're going from the mid 40s to the mid 50s, maybe a little bit higher. And somebody might say, oh my gosh, you only got to the 50s, you must have a lot of problems. Well, we had I didn't run this ahead of time, but from the mid 40s to the mid 50s, you're looking at about a 20% improvement. And when you're multiplying, the amount of production that you're doing, and you're increasing your OEE by 20%, that's either a lot of money or a lot of money, one of the two. So maybe when you did your plans and when you did your gap and your projections, you have an honest ceiling of where you think you can get to. But I just wanted to reinforce the point that don't worry about the low numbers, because you're multiplying 3 decimals together. So it's not going to be, I think very few people, and Aaron, with your experience, I think there's very few people that expect to get OEEs in the 80s or worse than 90s. But I think starting out a lot of the CELO numbers, and not to worry about that, but take that as an opportunity to improve.
Yeah.
Again, how do you get the data? You can collect them manually, like it sounds like about a third of you are doing or trying to get going. You can go semi-automated. We're doing some of that in our facility right here, and then fully automated with where it can be. Again, you've got examples here of wired and hardwired, but some of the software can really help you collect this data. And now that shirt is no longer in the back of your closet. It's now the first row of your dresser. And so every day you can see your OEE performance, and maybe even some of your Paretos to go along with that get fully automated. So you go right into analysis mode from a speed time. Ways to calculate OEE spreadsheets, it's easy. We've all got them. The cons is very labor intensive, and you can make mistakes. The software, I think we talked about it a little bit just a minute ago. It's a lot easier to collect. It's less time intensive, no typos, but it allows you from an ROI aspect to do more of analysis and improvement than just churning and burning the numbers. I know in my case, a lot of my supervisors, we do a lot of things manual here, they do so much churning and burning. Once they get the number, they just leave it there. I'm like, wait, is that good or is that bad? What are we going to do to make it better? And, oh my gosh, it took me so long to get this done. But the software lets you go right into the analysis. Mm-hmm. And as a wrap up, much more than equipment effectiveness, and much more than just efficiency, creates an environment of teamwork. I know we've talked about it a lot, but this is your do and die with OEE and a lot of other stuff. It really helps promote teamwork in the plant. You have that, you get a lot of happy people. A lot of people like doing what they're doing. They can, show, look what I've done. And again, I think, don't worry about put it on my resume and those things, but it's true. Some people get doing a project like this and then having it become part of the regular shirts in the closet. It becomes, so good that it charges them, gives them confidence to do other stuff. So it can help people, see what they can actually do and achieve in the company. Make it as easy or as complicated as you want. Again, try to stay from complicated in the beginning. It's just a great way to drive continuous improvement. And finally, once you get it up and running, make sure you reward the team and keep that recognition going as they continue to drive the continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Real quick for myself, you've got my website and email if anybody were to have any questions afterwards.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, thank you, Robert. I appreciate it. Let's keep that on the screen a little bit so people can kind of write that down if they want. I'll take over there. You said something really interesting. You in that example you gave, they started out around that 40%. And there's this real fear, right, Robert? It goes beyond the equipment part and the operations and the process. It's a fear sometimes we encounter with our own customers where it's like, well, what if I do start out at 40%? We often have to just kind of have this moment with them at some point that says, okay, right now you're running at 100% because that's what you think. But would you rather keep running at what you think is 100% and doing your best, or no, you can improve by 50% over the next X time, right? It's about understanding and changing that mindset of, I think we're doing our best. We know that. We know this is, right now is probably one of the most difficult times to be in process manufacturing or manufacturing in general. I mean, the supply chain issues, the labor, all of this is happening and it's challenging us. But if we just take a step back and say, I would like to focus on continual improvement instead of where I'm at right now, focus the discussion to your managers, to the plant manager, to the GMs, all of that on where you want to go and that it's a path of improvement. That generally sticks, right? Have you had to have those kinds of conversations in your experience, Robert?
Oh, sure. I mean, you've got, like we saw, you've got a quick hit here. And so like you talk about, being the low number, a low number means you've got a lot of opportunity. You've got a lot of opportunity. So, it's a double bang. You can get that quick hit, but then you actually can convert it into standard work as part of your operations. And, once you get your OEE up to where you want, hey, kick it up 10% a year. I would challenge anybody to say they can't improve their OEE 10% year over year for a very, very long time. So it's a double bang. You get that quick hit where oh my gosh, in 2 months, we saved the company, $130,000 on a yearly basis. That's a quick hit, that's great, but it converts into that standard work on a daily basis and helps drive your continuous improvement. And that's where a lot of people, actually appreciate that they're so thankful that they started and they kept doing it.
And that's exactly right. I've never, here's a proof positive data point that I want to share with everyone. We've gone through this process many times, but we've never gone through it, implemented safety chain software for OEE and all that. And then in like a couple months, people come back to us and go, boy, that didn't work. This is not working. We routinely go, oh my gosh, we learned so much having this real-time visibility to OEE. You were talking about those Pareto charts like instantly. Yeah, when you have that at your fingertips and even on your mobile phone walking around, or maybe, some of our folks, maybe they got a vacation, they can still kind of see what the operations are looking like. When you have that, it dynamically changes the way that you want to run those operations and it becomes better. It's this instant like win for everyone. So, well, we've got some cool questions coming in, Robert, and we had so Susan, we're going to get to your questions right now because she's got some good ones. And so there's a bit of what we have, just so if anyone knows, we've got Anne who is silent, but she helps take care of everything on the backside of this broadcast. And she's been talking back and forth with Susan. So first question Susan has, Robert, is, she says, we are a batch manufacturing facility. How do we calculate OEE? And we had to ask her a little bit more, right? So we asked her, can you tell us how you're currently measuring yield, uptime, and throughput? She said, mostly by yield. Our process calls for a lot of manual operations. So when she says we are a batch manufacturing facility, how do we calculate OEE? Is there any nuance or difference to that, Robert?
I guess I would first, go back and check with her whether some of her concerns are the setups or possibly the different standards between parts.
Okay.
If you're running a batch, so obviously I assume you're running at different batch sizes, but you've got different setups. So part of the question is, how do you count, a setup? Do you count a setup as part of the as part of the standard? Do you count it as downtime? Do you count, do you say, okay, 15 minutes for each one and that's what we'll count? We'll go back to it. You can do it any way, any way you choose. The nice thing about looking at setups, and it was on one of the slides before, is the SMED, the single minute exchange of dies. So this would drive you to try to, use SMED to make your changeovers, more external and have less time between, or less setup time, so that your available time is actually, is actually more positive, depending if you're counting that as available time or not. So I would, I would look at the setup times, and then, how do you handle it when you get different standards? You can still do that. You can still, calculate your efficiency part to part based on the time that it ran and the standard that it had. So I don't know if that's what she was looking at, or maybe another part.
Let me give you a little more though, because she did kind of write back in, and again, Susan, I appreciate your openness here, this transparency. We hope to help you out. So she's coding, so it's not parts, right? So this is process. So it's coatings, mostly automotive, batches in various sizes depending on demand and fill. We could do 350 gal totes, drums, pails. So think about like the diversity there for a quick second. I think you're still thinking, okay, depends on how your setup looks, but I think for her it might also be almost the ingredients, right? The raw material, getting the right things in the right order too. What would that change or give, Robert, any nuance to making that coatings? How do you do the batches?
And again, without seeing the process of the operation, from the OEE standpoint, if you do have different mixes, because you are looking at batches, so if it's also like you're making a soup or something, you can still, again, you take those three categories, you try to find what each of them should be. You're still looking to do, so much, you're looking to get so much product out at so much time. You're looking for value added time. So if the value added time, you can track out by your efficiency. And then when you're actually not, producing the product, why not? And put that in the other category. I mean, again, without seeing it, it's hard to visualize it. But I think you just try to break it up and do it. And you know, I would, if they can give me some more examples by, you know, by email or something, I'd be happy to respond.
Yeah, there you go, Susan. You got Robert's email here. That might be something you want to pick his brain about. And this is what we're here for. We want to help you guys out. So, great question. Got a couple more for you, Robert, as we go through this. So, another Paul says, I've heard there are other other formulas that can be used for OEE. Is that true? And we kind of went through that. So let me go back. There was one. Let's see, I can't remember where it was. It was right here. So you said, wow, it's way back here. With most types of, but you can make modifications to formulas that make sense for your particular business. And I think that's where that came from. Are there some nuances to the math? Is there different sort of ways to be able to actually produce that OEE number?
Yeah, from, again, looking at beginners, this is the formula that we're looking at, right? But yeah, there are other ways. There's, you know, industry standards that might use other formulas. I do understand you're going to be doing a part 2 to this, you know, OEE for more advanced, and, you know, that would be, you know, a good time, you know, probably to see that. But different industry standards do have different ways of calculating it. You know, the one we presented here today was just the general one to understand the basics.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is good. There are a couple of nuanced differences in the formula. It is, like Robert said, it would be really hard to cover for us today, Paul, but what you want to do is just know going into that process, hey, let's figure that out in the process of doing this. So another person asked, and I think this is probably one of those people that are in that 30% that are just started to check this out, right? It says, what are some of the common challenges you see when first talking about implementing an OEE project? Any overall hurdles that you sense that are, you know, going to be typical that you want to be aware of?
I think it's important in the beginning to try to you know, you define really well why you're looking at it and how this is going to benefit the team, the organization, and the customer. A lot of the initial ones that hurt is, or that hurt the program is when people taking it personally and getting defensive about it. So, you know, if you outline really clear that this team has a chance, you know, in the beginning when you sit down with them, you know, this team has a chance to dramatically improve the performance of our plant, of the company, and even with the customer. So we're going to look at a lot of things. We need to be open and honest. We need to work together. We're all going to win or we're all going to lose. Take your pick. So the barrier I see is where people are getting very defensive and arguing about what is downtime and what is correct. And you need to get over it, and you need to get it done quickly and get on with it. So more than anything, it's the way it's proposed. If it's proposed as a negative project, it's going to be negative. If it's a team of the good thing that this can, you know, this is going to make your job easier. It's going to make your job more fun. It's going to make you more productive and the company more productive. And this is the way we're going to go. It's a much better way of starting it out.
Yeah, and that goes back to what you were saying too, Robert, about, hey, celebrate these things, right? Oh God, I love the way you said that. If you go into it being, and it's a negative project, guess what's going to happen, right? If you go into it with a positive mindset and reward that growth mindset, reward that, hey, this is the path that we're going to go to get better, and then celebrate the success. That's awesome. Love it. Love it. One more question, and then I think we can wrap up. This is something I kind of struggle with too, Robert. I don't really know what to say to some of our clients when they come to us. Like, so how should we benchmark OEE to show impact and the ROI? You have to do these things for software projects, right? How do you benchmark OEE to show the impact of ROI of a software project?
Oh, I mean, benchmarking in general, there's so many different ways to do it. You know, gosh, I don't know.
This is when you hire Robert.
You know, there's you've got your competition, and you've got people that do similar industries. There's so many people that do similar operations that you do that aren't your competitors. I think it's very easy to find those people and you know, help them along. You know, ask your software provider, who have you sold this to that can help us, you know, see what their real gains would look like, and how can we you what we would expect to get. But I think, between, the software people helping you get this going, but there are a lot of people out there that run similar processes that aren't competition, and they would be willing to share their performance data. And then you could use that to calculate the ROI and really where you expect from the baseline, where you expect to get, and then your ROI on the project. I think it's out there, and if the software people are looking as well, then people like us, we can get information from, keep it confidential, and help people benchmark numbers.
Yeah, great. And that's true. You got to push on those software providers. They'll let you know. It's really funny. Another last anecdote, and then we'll kind of wrap this up, Robert. One of the things that we didn't ask everyone on the line, which was sort of like what size of facility you are. This is something I want to make sure everyone comes away with very quickly, which is OEE can be used in a one machine operation, single line, single warehouse sort of thing, or it can be used at that sort of enterprise level. And here's the thing, in our experience, both get value equally from it. And what I mean by that is the largest food manufacturers in the world running our software, before they ran it, we've got a story, Robert, where we went in, we implemented OEE. This was actually an automated, so we were talking directly to equipment, SCADAs, PLCs, and some sensors, right? So we did a full setup, right? Hardware and software. But within 2 weeks, their theoretical max, we didn't get into the Tmax here, but they challenged their Tmax, and what they learned in 2 weeks of real-time data was that they were too low. They set all of their operational targets low, and in 2 weeks raised their Tmax 40%. Now, will you always see this silver bullet? No. But the point I'm trying to make is even the big guys, your big competitors out there, whatever, everyone has an opportunity to improve, right? And this is a really powerful way to do that. So OEE, Robert, thank you so much. We do have another one coming up next week, moving the OEE needle, getting to 85%. We've got TVM on the phone for that one. Robert, super happy that you joined us today. Thank you so much for taking your time and lending us your expertise on Beyond Compliance. And we hope to see you again here soon. We want to make sure that we're giving people what they need, and this is exactly what they need, Robert.
All right, well, thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun.
All right, well, that'll wrap it up for us today on Beyond Compliance. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the week. This'll end it for us this time. Cheers.